says it's the first day of summer. So this is something we always enjoy here at Wright-Locke Farm. I'm speaking into this mic so you can hear me, but also we're being recorded by Wincam. So we're going to put the speaker series up on camera or up on the Wincam site so that you can refer back to them and refer your friends to them if you hear something tonight that you really enjoy and you want to share it with others. So I see lots of familiar faces here in the crowd, people who've been here many, many times, but I'm very pleased to see many, many new faces in the crowd, and welcome to you. We hope that you will be frequent visitors to the farm because new people is always what makes us great. So just a very, very brief history for those new people here. Wright-Locke Farm is a nonprofit community farm, and we do a couple of things. We grow certified organic vegetables. We do farm-based education for kids and adults alike. And I guess this would be considered farm-based education tonight. And then we also host lots of events, private events, public events. One of our big events is tomorrow night, our family farm night, where we have literally upwards of 1,000 people who will come and enjoy a picnic on our hillside and listen to some music. So we are an engaging farm. We try to encourage the public to come and to participate, volunteer, enjoy this lovely resource in Winchester. So this farm has a long, long history. They started farming this land in 1638, and it was farmed by 3 families up until 2007, when the town of Winchester bought the farm and formed the Wright-Locke Farm Conservancy, and we have been running the farm since 2007 as a community farm. We have lots of things going on here. Every day there's a new flurry of activity from anything from our CSA distribution on a Thursday afternoon, or our morning and afternoon education programs that run all summer long in the spring and fall. We harvest Tuesday morning for the Lexington Farmers Market, Tuesday afternoon. We have our family farm nights, as I mentioned before, that draw big crowds. There's always lots going on here at the farm, and that's really what makes us a dynamic place. We have lots of room for visitors, and we encourage you to come, even if it's not a formal event. You can come any time of the day. After dark, we encourage people to stay home, but during daylight hours, we're open 365 days a year, and we are supported by our community, not only financially supported, but also volunteer efforts. We have lots of volunteers who come and plug into our farm in many, many different ways. So if that's of interest to you, see one of us after this evening's presentation. So Wright-Locke Farm is a small farm. We're 20 acres, and we grow on 2 acres of land. And we have limited facilities. And we're finding that you know, we are doing lots of great things, but we're sort of bumping up against our limits. And we're always, searching ways to expand our impact, expand our mission. We want to have an outsized impact, if you will, for our small little community farm. And that's really what was the genesis of this speaker series. We felt that this would be a good way to engage a wider community here in Winchester, but also outside of our town boundaries, and engage a different communities, people who are interested in different ideas and thoughts. So we've developed this speaker series. This is our first evening, and so we're very excited about that. And the idea is to highlight issues that we feel are important in the farm, either sustainable agriculture or healthy and nutritious food and food outcomes, maybe a new appreciation and respect for the land and the environment. So we have 5 evenings planned this summer. You can always remember it's the 3rd Wednesday of each month through October. And we have some really interesting speakers on our poster here. You can see who they are. And we're very pleased that our kickoff speaker, our lead speaker, is Renee Barille, who is here with us tonight. And I want to tell you a little bit about Renee. And I have to use a paper because I was saying to her, there are too many long medical and health-related terms here for me possibly to be able to reel these off. So Renee is a registered dietitian, and she's the program director at the MPH Coordinated Program in Dietetics at the College of Health Sciences at UMass Lowell. MPH, for those, is a Master's in Public Health. Is that correct?
Yes.
She's a lecturer there at UMass Lowell in the Department of Biomedical and Nutritional Sciences. Renee received her Master's of Science and PhD in nutrition biochemistry and metabolism with a concentration in epidemiology from Tufts University. Renee has received many professional and academic awards, and I've got a whole list that I'll read out. But no, I'll just refer to her most recent one. Most recently, she was named the 2017 Dietetics Educator of the Year for coordinated programs by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So Renee and her family live in Winchester. She has visited the farm many times. Her kids are in our farm ed programs. Even Alex, her son, is in our afternoon program, farm ed program this week here at the farm. She also has several students who are studying with her at UMass Lowell who participate here with internships as part of their academic pursuits. So we're very happy to be engaging people who are making these kinds of things their life goals. And Renee herself actually has attended a panel discussion we had here several years ago about local food and its importance for nutritional and health outcomes. So I welcome Renee to the farm, and I would hope that you would join me in a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, that was fun. Very nice introduction. I'm so excited to be here. They've got me mic'd up too. Do I sound okay? Yeah. Okay. We can keep it on then. I think it's fun. So very excited to be here. I've given lots of presentations, never in a barn. Interrupted by a rooster, barking dog, we'll go with the flow. I've got about 40 slides. That usually takes me a little under an hour. I'll kind of gauge how you're doing and speed up. So let me talk a little bit about this graphic. Whenever I put a new presentation, the first thing I do is Google, probably like everybody else. So when you Google how to eat sustainably, one of the first things you'll get is this picture. Pyramids are a bit passé in the nutrition world, but it's a nice graphic that represents, what we're supposed to be eating, which is all the lovely fruits and vegetables, all the great things that we can get at the farm. And then the flip side, thinking about, well, what's the environmental impact of our food choices? And the great news is it's pretty much a win-win situation, right? The healthy food that we're supposed to be eating more of happens to be the same type of food that's usually pretty good for the environment. So that's the big picture. So you can put on. Kim's my technical assistant. So if you keep hitting enter, maybe the text will come up. There we go. So audience participation. Without thinking too deeply, if I ask you, what should you be eating? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Hamburgers.
Hamburgers. Kale, thank you. Fruits and vegetables. Salmon, excellent. So we're getting some of these healthy messages. So the public gets information all over about what they eat. Some of it's good sources, some of it's bad. Maybe not bad is the right word, but some are better than others. Nutritionists or registered dietitians, which is what I am and the type of program that I run that's training registered dietitians, get their information from a lot of places too, but one of the first places that we usually look are the dietary guidelines. So they are meant more for professionals, but I think now we're really starting to discover that the more you're an informed consumer, the more you understand sort of where the recommendations come from, they can kind of inspire you to choose to follow them or not. So when we think about avoiding hamburgers, eating our fruits and vegetables, eating our salmon, choosing this over that, and listening maybe to a registered dietitian, where do they get their information from, and specifically the dietary guidelines? Like, what are those actually based on? And you would hope that they're based on actual facts, right? Evidence, science, research, and for the most part, the dietary guidelines are. And when you think about what is the goal of good nutrition, I'm guessing this is an audience that already cares about it because you're here. What are you trying to do when you eat your kale and your salmon? Maybe you even eat foods you don't really like, but you eat them because they're healthy. So your motivation is what?
Lose weight.
Lose weight. What was
Overall health.
Overall health. Absolutely. And the dietary guidelines, they're very much focused on preventing chronic disease. And that's a big problem in our country. It results in more deaths than it should. So we'll talk about that as well. Next slide. Oh, I'll get to that later. There's a lot of dietary recommendations. This is kind of a big picture view of what we're supposed to be eating, talking about, you know, how much of our diet should be carbohydrates. And there's a range for a reason. There's more than one thing that's healthy. So the bulk of our food, 45 to 65%, should be carbohydrates. A lot of people are really surprised by that. You know, there's still sort of a feeling that carbohydrates are bad, that they promote weight gain, that we should avoid them. And I think this picture does a nice job of reminding us that carbohydrates come in a lot of different foods. Right? Fruits and vegetables contain carbohydrates, and we're supposed to eat a lot of those. That actually should be a big bulk of what makes up our diet. There's a lot of carbohydrates that have a lot of nutrition, especially the less processed, more whole grain types. Other thing that we should be eating every day, 20 to 35% of our diet is fat. And that's gone through a lot of trends over the years. Fat used to be really bad and everybody avoided it. Then it was really good, and then you had to think about what type of fat. They're certainly better than others. Some are better than others, but certainly a big part of your diet should be fat. Protein, people are usually surprised that that's actually kind of small. 10% is still considered within the healthy range. And there's still a lot of thought out there that if something has protein, it must be good for me. And if I eat a lot of protein, I'll lose weight. And that's not always necessarily true. Micronutrients are all the vitamins, minerals. There's too many of them for me to talk about tonight, but I'll touch upon them a little bit. So this first quote here is right from the latest dietary guidelines. I hope it's kind of a no-duh statement, right? So overall, the evidence, so that's all the science and the research we've been doing, on the links between physical activity, nutrition, and health have never been so strong, right? We know that if you eat healthy and you exercise, you will go a long way in preventing disease. It's very, very important for health and health prevention. And we know this, and we've been preaching it for years, and then we still have these statistics that kind of break your heart, right? 1 out of every 2, so half of American adults have 1 or more preventable chronic disease. Why is that happening when we have all of this knowledge? Why are 2 out of 3 Americans struggling with their weight? You know, we have a pretty good idea of how to avoid weight gain too, but it's really hard for people to do. So there's a disconnect here. And the dietary guidelines are trying to help people do that. But part of the problem is actually the complexity of the whole system. Right? So we know that you choose to consume this food or not consume that food or get up and walk or drive your car instead. You know, diet, physical activity, other health-related behaviors are influenced by a whole variety of things. You know, what's in your fridge, who else you're eating with, what you were doing that day, how much time you had to shop, where you work, where you live, right? And over the years, the vast majority of these factors have really been pushed more towards unhealthy behaviors than they have towards healthy behaviors. And it's led to these statistics. So I'll always have a job with these statistics. My students are always going to have a job, but it's not so great for our overall health. So the newest dietary guidelines, they came out in 2015, and I'm really going to highlight some of the major changes, the updates they made. And one of the big things that they now talk about is this concept of a healthy eating pattern. Some parts of the dietary guidelines have been around forever. So there's people in this room older than me. That's not usually the case. I'm usually the oldest one. So you will recognize the idea that you should eat fruits, vegetables, protein, dairy, and grains, right? I was taught that when I was a kid. You were taught that when you were always a kid. It hasn't changed too much. Now that we have all the heart disease and diabetes that we do, we focus on less saturated fat, less added sugar, less sodium. But one of the mistakes that I really think that we've made is this idea of a healthy pattern, that we're just now talking about it, thinking about it this way, and it's really talking about the totality of all the foods that you eat. Right? We don't eat one food, we eat many foods. They combine together in different ways. And what we've really sort of missed the boat on is recognizing that there's a lot of different ways you can combine your foods and they can be really healthy. And there's a lot of different types of recommendations that we can make to people so they can be really healthy. So our goal is to help people meet their nutrition needs, get all of the vitamins and minerals and all the things they need to be healthy, and limit the fats, the sugars, and the salt that make us more at risk, right? So that's what the dietary guidelines are trying to do. They talk about how all this kind of comes together as a puzzle. And I can give you another example of that. Heart disease is probably the most publicized because it does kill the most Americans of all of our other chronic diseases. And there are all kinds of things that you can eat or not eat to prevent heart disease. So if you're trying to avoid this, what should you eat? Someone said salmon earlier. That would fit here as well. Anything else that is a good food or nutrient to prevent heart disease?
Lots of vegetables.
Lots of vegetables, lentils. Anything you should be avoiding that's going to clog up your arteries? Beef. Oh, wow. Okay. You knew that one. Somebody's been told to avoid butter, cheese, red meat, right? The point being that a diet to prevent heart disease is a lot of different things. It's not just one thing. So kind of stepping back, thinking about the whole picture, that's a new way to think about things. I think it's really exciting. So the next slide is going to show you some of the different patterns that are endorsed. So maybe you've heard of these. The first one is what's associated with the symbol that goes along with the dietary guidelines, kind of the healthy US diet. Half your plate fruits and vegetables, you know, a little more than a quarter of your plate grains, preferably whole grains, unprocessed grains, protein, which can come from a variety of sources. But that's not the only one, right? There's tons of research. This is referring to the Mediterranean diet. Probably you've heard of that. That shows that this is really good at preventing heart disease too. People who live in Mediterranean countries, who this is just their normal life, the way that they eat and live their lives, don't get nearly as much heart disease as we do. So what do they do? You know, I always like to throw my loved ones under the bus. So if you ask my mother if she eats a Mediterranean diet, she would say, yes, because I drink red wine every day. Right? That is one thing that does not make you a Mediterranean diet follower. You can kind of see the picture. It is moderate alcohol consumption. It actually doesn't have to be red wine, as long as anything that's moderate. But it's tons of fresh fruits, vegetables, all the types of things you could get at the farm, unprocessed grains. When they sit down to eat, if there's a big piece of protein on their plate, it's probably fish, red meat, eggs not so much, but red meat, even poultry, like those are treats. Those are like once in a time foods. They're not every single day the biggest part of our plate, which is what we tend to see here in the United States. The other pattern that's I think trendy, but a good trend, is people are adopting different levels of